Welcome to Sacred Justice, a podcast that features discourse rooted in the pursuit of justice as sacred practice. Our weekly discussions reflect on current events, art, media, theology, and how they intersect with the movements for freedom and liberation. We hope that through these conversations, we can foster inclusivity by expanding our learning opportunities. We hope to cultivate digital community beyond the confines of our campus. And we hope to reconnect the church's social and spiritual callings. Join us for the journey. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sacred Justice. We are talking today with a special guest. But before I get into that, this is a new podcast. So I want to always be letting you know what we are doing in this new season as we build again. Sacred Justice is a new podcast that will feature discourse rooted in the pursuit of justice as sacred practice. Our weekly discussions reflect on current events, art, media, theology, and how this intersects with the movements for freedom and liberation. We hope that through these conversations, we can foster inclusivity. We hope to cultivate digital community beyond the walls of our church, and we hope to connect our church's social and spiritual calling. So welcome back to Sacred Justice. I'm excited this week to have this conversation with the Reverend Carrie Veal.
Thanks, Mia. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. I knew that when we started again, I wanted to start having more guests on so we can have conversation about what's happening in our lives in the world and how that relates to spirituality and justice. So just a brief recap before we get into it. Last episode, we discussed colorblind Christianity with the Reverend Dr. Ben Boswell, and that was a powerful conversation. So if you didn't listen to it, make sure you do. But what we discovered in that conversation was that colorblind Christianity, or the myth of colorblindness or myth of colorblind Christianity, affects all people. Anybody can embody that. So I was talking with Ben about how even Black folk have embodied white supremacist ideals and colorblindness as an ideal, and how that plays out in Charlotte. I've been, here for 2 years now and watching how these things have played out in Charlotte in the church plant culture here, the multicultural church plant movement and all of that stuff. And so if you get a chance, please do go back and listen to that. We hope to do a part 2 on that conversation shortly. So Reverend Carrie Veal, tell us about yourself briefly. Who are you for the people who don't know?
So I'm the Minister of Children and Community Life, and the month of May is my 7th anniversary at Myers Park Baptist Church, which is hard to believe. I jokingly say that I am qualified to be a minister and teach swimming lessons. And so if either one of those things ever become uncool, then I am in big, big trouble. I am married, and my husband and I have one dog, Oliver, who is a 13-year-old soft-coated Wheaten Terrier. And I am excited to have this conversation because in the last few years, I have really expanded my definition of justice and have really begun to understand that that everything either is just or it's unjust. It's fair or it's unfair. And that, as I say every week to the children, what is the dream that God has for the world? And the dream is for a just and fair world for everyone. So what are we doing as individuals and as a society to make God's dream for the world to come true? So it's a big task, but it's a task that I love that I'm called to because I'm not answering this call alone.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that. And also just bringing the kids into it, which is why I wanted to have you on, because we have so many parents and guardians who listen to this podcast. And so we always want to make sure we're thinking about our children when we're talking about faith formation, we're talking about justice. Yeah.
Right.
So as usual, we open up with some current event. And so, Carrie, what is happening? What have you been listening to or reading that you want to share with the people as part of your reflection as you bridge the gap between spirituality and justice?
So as I said, that my idea of justice continues to expand, and just like spirituality invades every part of our being, so does justice, at least in the way that I understand it. So just recently, I was listening to a podcast, and they were sharing a story about being a young mother in college and being completely exhausted. And the host said, I was so tired that a hospital stay sounded wonderful because someone would bring me my food. I would not be allowed to get out of bed, and I would have a swarm of people taking care of me. And I realized that rest falls into this category of justice, because we have become a society that thrives and applauds busyness. And so that's piece one. And then piece two is, we don't create space for rest for those who are not able to get rest for whatever reason. They are a single parent and they work multiple jobs. They are a caregiver for someone in their home who needs 24/7 care, and they can't afford to bring in help. And that's injustice, because that's not applauding busyness. That is ignoring reality for some people. And so I just keep thinking about, what are we as a community, however that's defined, offering, encouraging, and providing rest for ourselves and for others in whatever way rest looks like for them, because it is a commandment. I mean, how can we believe that rest was okay for God, but it's not okay for us, and it's not okay for another? Where's the justice in that?
Wow. When you were talking, you reminded me of, Psalm 23, in which the psalmist writes, God makes me lie down in green pastures. Like before we get into the good part, well, the popular part of Psalm 23, one of the first things David writes is, God makes me lie down. And we have trouble lying down. Sometimes it's us, and sometimes it's like the economic environment that keeps us from doing it. The lack of social care, which is kind of leads into my current event. But also, one last thing on the rest piece is, I follow this woman called the Nap Ministry online. And so she created this platform. Her name is, I think it's Trisha Hershey. I'm gonna check on that and get back to y'all, but I think her name is Trisha. But she has the Nap Ministry, and she tweets about how we are called to rest. Particularly, she's talking about women of color, Black women, and how rest is resistance for many of us who, like you were saying, Carrie, aren't able to take a day off, or have some go to the spa and do self-care.
Right.
Yeah. So I encourage you to follow her on Twitter and other places. She posts really good reminders that we all need to be taking breaths and resting. My current event kind of dovetails. This article was released, I guess, yesterday or the day before, about how birth rates are declining. Like, people aren't giving birth as much. Now, this has been an ongoing conversation for years, and the decline started 10 years ago, right? So this is not new, but just because it's not new doesn't mean it doesn't become news over and over again. And I thought it was interesting. This is released in Mother's Day week anyway. But one of the things that these articles do for me is I sit with all the things that aren't said in the article, and usually they lack nuancing. They lack information that accompanies it. And so what we've seen over the course of the past couple of decades, there's a decline in everything. There's a decline in organized religion, like people who do organized religion. There's a decline in church culture, volunteerism. I mean, the decline, the lists go on. And when you have these articles where you sort of single out this one particular thing without discussing the other, it doesn't really give a full picture. And so I've just been sitting with that. Like, what does that mean for us to talk about the decline in church attendance in the same conversation, right? That people
Right.
are stepping away from faith communities that used to pressure you into getting married and having children. They're not living their lives by those rules anymore. And they're saying, I'm not economically where I want to be to even do this, even if I wanted to.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So
And
that's been, go ahead. Yeah.
And what I think is so interesting about that is, how are we talking about that in ways that are helpful, and not, oh, woe is us, woe are we, whatever the grammar is there. But instead saying, we honor that. We honor that decision that you've made. And we don't want to lose you from our faith community. If the wound is, I don't fit into this picture that has always been prescribed to me. And I think that's a big part of it, is that we just link those things, right? Like, we want people, whenever you talk about, church, you're always saying, well, we want young families. Well, how are you defining a family? I mean, I didn't get married till I was in my mid-30s. I had dogs. I had a cat. We were a family.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's so, especially this week, as we, there's things loading the internets about, celebrating parents and things like that. And how so many churches have failed a whole population. And as the birth rate declines, or as people are deciding not to become parents in that way, or waiting later, that means that we have to change language. We can't talk about young families, because by the time some of our people have kids, they're 40.
Yeah,
They do
exactly.
that.
Exactly. And they may feel young.
Yeah.
Personal experience. I don't feel old. I feel
Right.
young. But,
we know
but
that's not what they're talking about all the
exactly,
time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So anyway, I found that to be interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, those two current events sort of dovetailed off of each other. So we're going to get into it. So our theme for the first couple of episodes that we are doing is called Beginning Again. As we prepare as a church community, as others prepare to begin anew. And we've been really intentional about not saying we're going back. We're not going back to anything. We are starting again. So I would like to open with a quote from one of my favorite authors and theologians. Her name is Dr. Monica Coleman. Phenomenal woman. You should definitely read some of her work. The book that I'm quoting from today is called Making a Way Out of No Way, a Womanist Theology. And in the opening of chapter 5, she says, 21st century African American women can still describe their God as one who helps to make a way out of no way. We make a way out of no way as we live in and through communities that seek to creatively transform the world in which we live. We teach, we heal, and we do it all over again. In so doing, we transform our souls, our communities, and ultimately the whole world. We make a way out of no way as we draw upon the best of the past to positively change our world. End quote. So I picked that quote because she says that we creatively transform, and we are not bringing anything back. We are not going back to anything. We are being creative in the way that we reimagine, and that we can pull from the best of the past. There are some things that we want to hold on to that were really working well. And then as we move forward, we let some of that other stuff in the past go that wasn't serving us. And it's uncomfortable. She talks about in another chapter, it being uncomfortable. Creative transformation doesn't always make us feel good in the moment, but it's for the sake of life and the sake of survival. And so with that, I want to open up the conversation. Carrie, tell us about the last 14 months, and you can give us anything from personal reflections to your church work as the minister of children and community life and other things. What has been going on, and how are you creatively transforming?
It has been I don't think anybody would use a different sentence than this. It has been the strangest 14 months. It has been exhausting in a way that I have never been exhausted before, because of the transformative creation that is happening, and that's exhausting. And it hasn't always been a bad exhaustion, but it is tiring. And I think that what comes from what sort of jumped out to me with that quote and the whole idea is how often we might just give up because it is tiring. And it is just so easy. It's just much easier to say, well, we'll just go back. Like when the Israelites were just in the desert and they were like, can we just go back? This is hard and this is tiring and we don't like it. Can we just go back? And most of us will say, no, we don't want to go back. No, we don't want to return to fill in the blank. So for me, it was really focusing on the parents, I did things I've never done before. For the first time in all my years of ministry, I acknowledged Mother's Day. And I sent this little coupon book that I thought was so cheesy and cute at the same time to every mother and grandmother in the children's ministry. And the number of parents who reached out to me and said, you will never know how much this meant to me, because we so rarely really get anything that is truly just for us. One parent shared that her child actually had said, Mom, I'm going to make you a coupon book. And they got home really late on the night before Mother's Day. And this coupon book that I had mailed was sitting in their mail. And the mom was just able to give, to just let this appear by her child's bedside table so that this was the gift. And her child was so excited. She said, I don't know how this happened, but this is amazing. And here's your gift. And it's so wonderful. And so something that was, that was transformative to me, because for me, it was like all of the wounds that surround that particular holiday, and never wanting to elevate one descriptive that a person has that another doesn't have, and yet it was really powerful that I pushed past my own feelings and whateverness to say this is a time to do something different, and just helping people learn that you can stay connected through technology. Is it ideal? No, but imagine if we didn't have this. If we didn't have, if we really did have no way to see each other beyond waving at our neighbor through our windows or across the yard. And then with everything that was happening in the world, in our country, and with violence and social unrest and police brutality, our children were being able to see and hear these stories and these events in real time. They weren't hearing about it on the playground or on the bus and one kid's telling another kid. They were witnessing it while their parents were watching the news or reading an article. And so it gave me this beautiful opportunity, because for the last 14 months, with the exception of, a handful of volunteers, it's pretty much been me doing, most of the leading and the teaching. And so I was able to lead kids in book conversations around these hard issues. And that was transformative and exhausting and scary, because with kids, you never know, well, what are they going to ask? What are they going to share. But at the same time, it was giving these parents these resources and these tools to be able to know how to have the conversations, because it was stuff they had no idea how to talk to their kids about. And their kids are asking, I don't understand this. I don't understand why this would happen. So I think that's been one of the most, what I've tried to find every day is a pandemic perk. What is today's pandemic perk? And some days it was, I didn't have to put on makeup. Most days I didn't have to put on makeup. But a pandemic perk really was having raw, honest, meaningful conversations in ways that pre-COVID-19 we couldn't have, because our lives, let me rephrase that. It was more challenging to have because we were not making the space to have those conversations. Yeah. Because we were more interested in being at the ball field, or being out to dinner, or being somewhere, rather than present for hard conversations. And hearing parents say, how are you talking with your children about this? Made it gave so many of our parents other people to then know, okay, I can reach out to this person because they are like-minded. And I might not be able to have had this conversation at the ball field with, the other parent on my kid's team, because they may not be of the same mindset and the same worldview that I am. So my hope and my deep prayer is that we will be able to maintain those spaces of conversation, and that parents won't just run back to all of the things that occupied their time and their space before.
Yeah, that is so important, Carrie. I was just talking to a parent this morning, and she was talking about how, her daughter's schedule is already filling up with things. I guess my schedule's filling up kind of, but the children really they're going back to normal, they really are going back. There are soccer things that are going back. Yep. There are dance things that are happening. And so I am a little concerned that while we can have this vision for creative transformation, we are always in competition, for lack of a better word, with all these other things that are not trying to creatively transform.
Right.
Or that's not beneficial for them.
Right. Well, how it brings the question to mind of, okay, then really, how do you change a culture? Because if a year long wasn't long enough, then how long does it take? And what really has to happen in order for the culture to shift? I've talked to parents who even before March 2020 said, my kid gets one activity each season. That's it. They want to do piano, fine. That means you're not doing a sport. You want to do a sport, fine. That means you're not doing scouts. And I applauded them, because they shared how they were ridiculed for that. And I know that I was the overprogrammed kid. I had something every night of the week. And the only difference was that, in the 80s and the early 90s, you didn't have stuff on Sunday nights and Wednesday nights, at least in the South, because those were church nights, and you knew, your ball teams knew. And, and even in my early days of ministry, when the traveling sports stuff started, and, and early Sunday morning soccer games and tennis matches, and it's so challenging. I find it to be very challenging, because I think it would be incredibly hard to be a parent right now, because how do you help your child make those choices when everything is a good choice, but what is the best choice?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I do that when I don't want to just have a knockdown, drag out battle with my kid every single day?
Yeah.
How do I make that transformative creativity come about when I, as a 40 something, struggle with it? And I just have to struggle with it for me. I don't have to struggle with it for my kid because I don't have humans in my household,
Mm-hmm.
little humans that I'm, responsible for. So, I mean, I don't know. How do you do that? Because the work, transformative creativity is not always entertaining. I mean, sometimes it goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, Mia, about, sometimes transformative creativity means you're going to rest. You're going to make a decision that is counter-cultural or is counter to what everybody imagines your life should be.
Yeah.
So,
Oh my God, this is on time, Carrie. Because Monica Coleman says, God may not always lead us to the ways that feel liberating. It may feel like you're being put in timeout, to say, you have to stay home and actually, rest with the family today, or you need to not go to that thing that you think is very fun. And she says it may feel like creative transformation will feel like a judge, but it's leading us to a way that will improve the quality of our life, the holistic quality of our life. And so I'm sure in the beginning of the pandemic, for you extroverts out there, I'm sure it was very much like you felt like you were in timeout.
yes.
What is happening here? But I do, from what I've heard from some people who consider themselves extroverts, that, and even from those of us who don't, that the overall quality of life has shifted in the pandemic, even with the discomfort at the very beginning, that there have been some, like you said, pandemic perks, and awakenings about how we do need to spend more time at home or do need to spend more time alone. And so I was wondering if you want to share any of your personal discoveries.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, so the last time I took Myers-Briggs, which has been several years, I scored 0 in introvert. So no, not nothing in me. And so when this began, there were pieces of it that were kind of easy because I was like, oh, okay, well, we'll just, I've done Zoom meetings because of groups that meet in different states, but I've never recorded myself on camera. So I'll have to learn how to do that. But that, that's I can figure out how to do that. I mean, I make selfie videos. I can figure this out. But then it was okay, wait a minute. I can't go and be with people, which is how I get my energy. So how am I going to get my energy? And so I had to learn that I might have to take a couple of extra walks a day through my neighborhood to at least pass other humans, even though I'm not interacting with them. I'm just imagining, their energy coming out of them and just, landing on me just to give me that little bit of spark and push to move to the next place. And then I realized, one of the biggest shifts for me was I lost my commute, which would either be my podcast time, my phone call to friend time, things like that. And so I had to learn how to incorporate those things back into my time, and reclaimed my love of note writing, and discovered, that how much, I mean, I will admit that I totally was the, learning to, bake bread, and that lasted for a little bit of time and it was wonderful. And then I realized, but I have no one to share this with. And so then this thing that would give me a little bit of life was also, kind of defeating, because I don't need to eat a whole loaf of bread. And, so I just had to keep, kind of, sort of adapting and changing. And now I've realized that, I feel like I've kind of found a good balance between, I want to be with people, but I'm becoming a little bit more selective. I've learned that no doesn't mean no never. It can mean no not right now, but it could mean no not ever. But I've also learned the beauty of we're gonna, my husband and I found ways to just, go away for a few days and do a, VRBO and say, oh, this is great because I'm getting away and I'm doing some work while we're traveling. And then now I'm here and I can just be away. And it doesn't matter that there's nothing quote unquote exciting, but we're away and we're resting. And those became pandemic perks that, it didn't have to be exciting. And because we weren't able to see family, while that was heartbreaking at moments, there was also this sense of relief of we can just go away, just us, and we don't have to make an intentional plan to spend downtime, off time, vacation time, working in a busy family trip with our nephews and our niece who we love, but it was just nice to say, no, we can't be with anybody but each other. And that felt like a gift at a lot of times. And then just to be able to say, it's 2:00 in the afternoon and I'm brain fried because I've been awake since before 6 and I started working at 7. And so I'm going to just lay here and read a fun book, not a workbook, not a thinking book, just a fun book. Or I'm going to binge on season 2 of Great British Baking because it is soothing and who doesn't love a great British accent? It doesn't matter what they're doing. They could be talking about, snails and it's just going to be wonderful because it's the accent.
That's funny. I'm binging, re-binging Scandal right now.
Oh, yes.
Which is so funny watching that years later. But I love this piece you said about baking and like your bread, which I have had the privilege of tasting and eating. And there's something about communal salvation and survival that requires a sharing, right? So that the creative transformation is never just for you. It's not something that you just own for yourself, but for it to be true transformation, there's a sharing that has to happen. So I know you started sharing your bread with me or with others, with everybody, but I appreciated that.
You're welcome. Well, that is, hospitality is something that I did a 4-week children's worship series on welcome and hospitality. And it was so interesting to read all of these different scriptures that talk about feeding people and welcoming people into your home. And so I couldn't really welcome people into my home, but I could figure out ways to feed people and share that gift of hospitality. So it was a nice balance of I'm sharing this because I want to, not because it's, I'm going to a communal meal and here's my offering, but it's just, no, I made this bread and I want to give it to you because, that's just what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And so moving forward into this new thing that we're getting ready to do, everybody is getting ready to do in some way, but moving forward, what does this mean for us? What does this look like? What does beginning again look like for Reverend Carrie Veal at church, with the community, in personal life? I mean, I know that's a loaded question, but even if it's a snippet of a train of thought, I mean, I'm kind of operating in trains of thought these days. And I know for me, beginning again sort of looks like you were saying, making those boundaries clearer. I can't begin again. I can't re-enter society without having to be selective about certain things for my own health, for the sake of my survival. So what does beginning again look like for the church, for Carrie, for...
Yeah. So I think for the church, I have spent a lot of time in the last couple of weeks really thinking about what are some things that I have always wanted to be different at church. You know, unless you are starting from complete scratch, you know, church plant type stuff, every minister inherits something.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a part of their ministry, they're inheriting something. And some of those inheritances don't need to be inherited. And some of those inheritances need to be put away in a box and tape up the box and walk away from the box. And so I'm really thinking about the people who are going to be coming to our campus, whether they've been there most of their lives or whether it will be their first time. And who do I want to be the first face? A masked face, but still a first face, the first eyes, we'll say it that way. And what are they coming to? Not coming back to. What are they coming to? So I want to be intentional about not just providing childcare or programming or welcome, but really living into what one of my mentors said. People go where they know they're cared for and prepared for. And what does that look like? I think one of the creative questions for building community is, how are we going to build community when we're not going to be able to sit at a big table and pass food? So how do we do that? How can we create community in new ways that it's not centered around something that we've always known? And I think that in the last 14 months and helping our children think about Bible stories in a new way and scripture in a new way, that's a huge thing I want to continue and birth new things in terms of how our children are engaging with other staff, right? Like that they don't just see this person for a few minutes in a worship service, but they're actually talking with them and learning from them. And the ministers are learning from the kids and they know their names, not just from, me saying their names or they see them on, social media, but they actually know, oh, this is fill in the blank. And they love Star Wars and play softball and, can do a backflip just on the dry land, which is just always amazing to me that children can do things like that. And so those are things that I find to be transformative for everybody, for the entire community, when we can say, what would you do if you really can begin again? What does that look like?
Yes. I love what, early in the pandemic, you mentioned this concept of interruption versus disruption.
And I was forcing myself not to say it.
No, say it for the people. I've loved it.
Okay, yeah.
With me because it's related to this. If we are to begin again, what is a disruption and what is an interruption?
Right.
And that's different for everybody and everybody's ministry. But could you explain a little bit more about that concept? And
yeah, sure. So I can't take credit for it. I heard it from a Black minister out of a church in Brooklyn, New York. And he also said, which I loved, that flexibility is a superpower. And so as I was watching this webinar, I said, well, hallelujah, our staff has that. So we've at least got that superpower. But the whole idea was, are you as an individual viewing this time as an interruption or a disruption? Is this an interruption to your television show while you're on commercial break? He kind of stopped it there, and I've kind of taken it to the next place. Or is this a disruption that your television has exploded and there's no other way to watch the particular show you are watching? You cannot flip it over to your iPad or your phone or go to a different room to a different television. It's just gone. And So now what are you going to do? What is the new that you're going to find? And I love that because we will probably never have that opportunity again. And so whatever we, well, I'm going to rephrase that. We will never have this opportunity again. But what I hope is that we have the flexibility within ourselves and within whatever community we're finding ourselves in to say, no, we are going to have the superpower of flexibility and say, this is what we're doing, and it may or may not work. So what if it was this kind of an always beginning again? Like you find the pattern that works. Like for me, I was in a really good pattern of going to the gym and doing a class at 6:15 in the morning. That was great for me. It worked for me. Is it going to work forever? I don't know. But it was a new thing, and it worked. And I'm going to be flexible to say that might not work in 2 weeks. So what is it that I need? I need the exercise. I need what happens when I get sweaty and my heart starts racing and all those endorphins go. But I don't need to be so mired in it has to happen at this time in this way at this location. Instead, it's I'm finding ways for it to happen.
Yeah. Yes. So the we're always beginning in part is what got me.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that we're always in Genesis, right? We're always in our Genesis moment. And I guess that's always my theological reflection. This entire pandemic has been Genesis, but also even when I was looking at Revelation the other day, 21, and then there'll be a new heaven and new earth, and there's always a new heaven and a new earth that's being formed because we are ever evolving people, and our lives are evolving, and the world is evolving. And so if we could approach life and church or faith and justice as we are always beginning, how would that liberate some people? I feel like some people need to be liberated from tradition, liberated from rigidity, right? That you are always reimagining.
Right. Well, I am not a gardener. I want to be, and more about like plants and flowers than food. Food feels like a lot of pressure. So, but I'm really learning about, annuals versus perennials and, shade and full sun and all these different things. And so I think about how nature has figured this out, right? Nature has said, okay, there's a time when everything just kind of has to go away and not be pretty. And there will be some things that are always pretty and always there. Okay, so what if we were to take that concept and say, what are the things that we want to always be strong and green and sturdy and reliable? Those are the things of God, right? Those are the things that never change: forgiveness and love and mercy and inclusivity and justice. Okay, so what are the things that have to go away and are going to need some, because it's not like you just walk away from even the stuff that goes away and then it comes back. You have to do something to it. Mm-hmm. So how are we tending to it in order to make it beautiful in a new way? Because there'll be a new bloom. There'll be it'll grow. It will expand. So is the root strong enough to see something come from it? Or is it just, you had it there and it died and you said, you know what, it was fine, but I'm not interested in bringing that back again because I found this other thing that is hardier, and it's going to bring more to this space than what that other thing brought. And I think we just get so mired in the belief in that, it was better. Well, what was better?
Yeah. 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 It's so freeing to think of it as the seasons, and to think of how we could be viewing things like nature. And things will take care of themselves. The things that are meant to stay and last are going to return.
Yep.
And so that's a beautiful ending point for me. Especially as I think about Revelation, and I think about the tree of life and how trees come back. And now we're in this spring season. We're getting ready to enter into this new beginning with the church. And so to think about the trees and the flowers blooming at the same time, it's very helpful for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And to not be, and I think, as I'm going back to this, nature reference, as I'm doing a lot of reading about what I want to plant in this new space that I have that has happened during the pandemic. I am not wanting to be mired in what I imagine I want it to look like if it doesn't end up looking like that. Because great, I love this. Look at how beautiful this plant is. And then it says it needs 6 to 8 hours of full sun. And the space that I have is never going to get 6 to 8 hours of full sun. So am I going to force something to try and grow in a way that it's not going to grow? Or am I going to be flexible and say, well, what could the new thing be? This is what I imagined, but look at this other new possibility, because what I imagined is just not going to be possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. Beginning again, flexibility, creative transformation, or you said something else, transformational creativity or something you said.
I probably got the quote wrong. So
no, it's fine. It's fine. These are things that we want to leave you with: creative transformation, transformational creativity, flexibility, disruption, and interruption. This is all a part of our growth and our Genesis moment that we are in. So we hope that you enjoyed our conversation. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Mia.
And we hope that you will listen and tune in again next conversation for our other special guests that you will hear next week. Thank you all again. This is Sacred Justice. Friends, that was our episode this week. As always, please email your questions and your suggestions to Reverend Mia McLean at mmcclain@myersparkbaptist.org. Until next time, take care. This is Sacred Justice.